Om Shri Matre Namaha. Swami Vivekananda, though disciple of Lord Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, he attained his own reputation. Though he was a disciple, but he has his own image in the Advaita philosophy. Swami Vivekananda, a person of analytical one, always he analyzes the surroundings, environment and each and every subject, unless come to the conclusion of the result, he never enters. At the same time, he never leave idle until getting the result. That is Swami Vivekananda's attitude. Even from childhood, he had reasoning capability. He is not a man of superstitions. He doesn't believe unless he sees with direct vision. He does not like he didn't like rumors, misconceptions, etc. That's why Swami Vivekananda became worldwide icon for Indian tradition and culture. Unless Vivekananda's appearance in the Chicago conference, we Indians might have not gotten the respect what we are getting now. That is because of Swami Vivekananda's credibility. He is a man of accountability, adjustability and sensitivity. He condemns atheist feelings and encourages theism. Sate Vivekananda's philosophy based mainly on Adi Shankaracharya's Advaita philosophy. He observed thoroughly Adi Shankara's Advaita and followed, because both are similar. One way you can see, Adi Shankaracharya, Swami Vivekananda are similar in each and every activities. From birth, he is a genius. From birth, he was also genius. Both are at early stage left this world, in the early age itself, between 30 below 40. In such a way, Swami Vivekananda thoroughly observed the philosophy of Adi Shankara and followed it. Therefore, we have to understand the philosophy of Swami Vivekananda's Advaita and get the essence and hardships what he had taken for the social responsibility. He also observed many philosophies. At last, he came to conclusion of following Adi Shankara's Advaita, which attracted him and made him to go deeply and thoroughly. In some times, Vivekananda, like Gandhi, defended what he considered the true spirit behind caste and creed. Vivekananda's motto is one: worshipping the human is better than worshipping God. That's why he used to say, Manava Seva Iva Madhava Seva. That type of philosophy, attitude made Swami Vivekananda to conquer all his senses under control and attained name and fame worldwide. Such as Swami Vivekananda's philosophy we should understand and learn. That's why today I took the topic of Vivekananda's Advaita philosophy. Prayer. Stapakaya cha dharmasya satya dharma swarupini avatara varishtaya Ramakrishnaya te namaha. It is accepted wisdom in scholarly circles today that the picture of Sri Ramakrishna painted by Swami Vivekananda and his followers exaggerates Ramakrishna's dedication that non-dual philosophy of Shankara and downplays the tantric elements in Ramakrishna's teaching. The influence of Shankara's Advaita philosophy has not only been exaggerated with regard to Swami Vivekananda. Vivekananda's own teachings, particularly on Karma Yoga and Bhakti Yoga, differ drastically from those of Adi Shankaracharya, the putative founder of the Advaita Vedanta philosophical tradition. This is not an accident or a failure on Swami Vivekananda's part to understand the philosophical tradition he claimed to uphold. Rather, careful reading of Vivekananda's corpus reveals his principal disagreements with Adi Shankaracharya concerning the ethical implication of absolute non-dualism. Vivekananda's teachings as well as those of his Guru Ramakrishna Paramahamsa reflect the influence of the world-affirming Advaita traditions on medieval India that understood the complete elimination of caste distinctions to be one important ethical implication of non-dualism. A famous episode in the life story of Shankara summarizes what came to be understood among many in the late medieval period as the social implications of the true awareness of Advaita. Biographies describe how Shankara, in his extensive travels, stopped in Varanasi, the holiest city for worshippers of Shiva. One day on his way to the Ganges river to bathe, Shankara came across a Chandala with 4 dogs, because Chandalas are among the most impure of outcasts. Out of concern for being polluted, the Brahmin Shankara motioned to the Chandala to move out of the way. The Chandala, however, made a philosophical observation that Shankara found impossible to refute. There is a quote from the version of the story told in Shankara Digvijaya, Madhava's celebrated 14th century biography of Shankara. There is no sign in the Upadesha Sahasri or the Brahma Sutra Bhashya of Shankara who acknowledges Chandala's teaching on the ghats of Varanasi. Instead, we are confronted in these texts by a Brahmin renouncer who upholds conventional distinctions of caste, admitting onto the path liberation only those who have the proper qualification for Upanishadic instruction. Throughout his works, Shankara frequently invokes the principle of Adhikari Bheda, that different individuals have different qualifications. He insists, for example, that the path of action, means Karma Yoga, described in the Bhagavad Gita is a lesser one. appropriate primarily for those whose birth and also mental qualities are not appropriate for the path of contemplation and Upanishadic study, means Jnana Yoga, that leads to final release. Orientalism and Vedantic ethics. Where did Vivekananda derive the idea that the ethical consequences of non-dualism are the complete elimination of caste distinctions, if not from the writings of Shankara? Paul Hacker, a 20th century scholar of Vedanta, who is one of the most outspoken critics of what he called Neo-Hinduism, argued that Vivekananda and other modern claimants, candidates to the tradition of Advaita Vedanta were, in fact, unwillingly parroting a pseudo-Vedanta that had its origins in Europe. Hacker's claim was that for traditional Advaita Vedanta, the Advaita statement was Tattvamasi, understood as the absolute unity of the individual self, and Brahman was only interpreted as a metaphysical principle. According to Hacker, it was not put to ethical use in historical Hinduism. The basis of Hacker's understanding of historical Hinduism is the writings of Shankara. Hacker is correct that the historical Shankara nowhere suggested that his philosophy of non-dualism entailed a radical revision of the ethical and social norms of his time. The standard interpretation of Shankara, upheld in the commemorial traditions of Vachaspati Mishra and Prakashatman, is of the strong dividing line between conventional, Vyavaharika, and ultimate, Paramarthika levels of truth. From the ultimate perspective, the perspective that can be realized through all distinctions are false, and only the undifferentiated Brahman exists. Nonetheless, on the level of conventional truth, the fiction of difference between subject and object, and indeed between Brahmin and non-Brahmin, must be maintained. In fact, seen from the perspective of conventional truth, such differences are real. Therefore, it is possible, or even if necessary, to act as if differences between beings are real, and to demand that the students of Vedanta come to their study with the proper qualifications. They should be learned Brahmin males with the proper temperament for prolonged Vedic study. Medieval non-dualist traditions of Shaiva and Shakta Tantra typically rejected orthoprax Vedic distinctions between the pure and the impure, while dualist tantric traditions generally left such distinctions in place. Tantric textual sources sometimes refer to these two approaches to ethics as left-handed Vamachara and right-handed Dakshinachara, respectively. Is it therefore fair to conclude that both Ramakrishna and Vivekananda are essence Vamachara Tantrics? The answer, I think, is clearly no. To insist on looking at these two thinkers reductively through the lens of Tantra ignores another important strand running throughout both thinkers' teachings, namely the path of bhakti. The importance of one bhakti-oriented text in the particular, in Ramakrishna's thought, the Adhyatma Ramayana. This text, loosely translated as a spiritual Ramayana, was composed between the 13th and 15th centuries as a part of the Brahmanda Purana. The Adhyatma Ramayana tells a famous story of Rama from unmistakably non-dualistic perspective. Rama is revealed, yet the text beginning to be the highest Brahman and Sita his power of creation. However, unlike Shankara's emphasis on knowledge, this text portrays devotion to Rama as a means to release. The Adhyatma Ramayana is hardly done in its fusion of Advaita and Vaishnava Bhakti themes. In fact, it is one of a large group of texts from the mid-second millennium that combine the two elements. In spite of the importance of Advaita Bhakti themes throughout modern Hinduism, these works have been generally neglected by Western ideologies. Among these Advaita Bhakti texts are the hymns of praise that were said to have been written by the philosopher Shankara himself. According to tradition, the hymn Bhajagovindam, praise of Krishna, was composed by Shankara one day as he was walking along the lines of Varanasi. He heard an old Pandit reciting Panian grammatical rules and took pity on him. Walking up to the scholar, he sang, Bhaja Govindam, Bhaja Govindam, Govindam Bhaja Mudamate, Samprapte Sannihite Kale, Samprapte Sannihite Kale, Nahi nahi rakshati dukrinkadane, Nahi nahi rakshati dukrinkadane, Bhaja Govindam, Bhaja Govindam, Govindam Bhaja Mudhamate. Praise Govinda, praise Govinda, O fool. When your appointed time has come, a grammatical rule will certainly not save you. It is unlikely that the historical Shankara never uttered these words to a grammarian sitting in an alley in Varanasi, as it would have been completely out of character for him to do so. For Shankara, knowledge alone liberates, and specifically the knowledge contained in the Upanishads, the end of the Vedas. Knowledge of grammar is, of course, necessary to understand the Vedas. Hence, grammar is at least an indirect means to liberation. But the sentiment expressed in this hymn is very much in keeping with the Advaita Bhakti of the mid-second millennium, reflected in Shankara's stotras, in the Adhyatma Ramayana, and in the biography of Shankara. It was the second millennium understanding of Advaita combined with non-dual tantric traditions that together shaped both Ramakrishna and Vivekananda's thought. In other forums, Vivekananda was quite ready to draw distinctions between his teachings and those of Shankara. In an 1897 letter to Padmadasamitra, a learned Brahmin Pandit in Varanasi, with whom Vivekananda had corresponded for 9 years, Vivekananda sounds quite different. The Upanishads and the Gita are the true scriptures. Rama, Krishna, Buddha, Chaitanya, Guru Nanak, Kabir Das, and so on are the true Advaita avatars, for they had their hearts broad as the sky, and above all, Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, Ramanujacharya, Shankaracharya, etc. seem to have been mere pandits with much narrowness of heart. Where is that love? What weeping heart at the sorrow of others? Try pedantry of the pandit and the feeling of only oneself getting to salvation, hariskari. The conviction is daily gaining on my mind that the idea of caste is the greatest dividing factor and the root of Maya. All caste, either on the principle of birth or the merit of bondage. To me, what would mlecha mean? Foreigners, food matters of parias. It is in the books written by priests that madness like that of caste are to be found, and not in the books revealed from God. At moments such as this, Vivekananda shows his loyalty to the world, affirming Advaita of his teacher Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, where he grasped the essence from his Guru. Here, the Shankara he refers to is the ideologist Ramakrishna Paramahamsa biography. He suggests that this Shankara's lack of compassion and concern with helping others and concern an indication of his inability to take his non-dual teachings to heart. In particular, Vivekananda seems to have in mind the narrowness of Shankara and Ramanuja's teachings with regard to caste in comparison to those who saw beyond caste, such Guru Nanak and Kabir Das, whose hearts were as broad as his kind. Gandhi interpreted the ancient social order in this way largely because he took the Bhagavad Gita to be the central text for the understanding of Hindu Dharma. The Gita explicitly supports the division of society into the 4 Varnas and twice asserts one's own Dharma done poorly is better than Dharma of another done well. Some contemporary Gandhians allied Gandhians' own unique defense of Varna. Gandhiji did not call for the destruction of Varna. In contrast to his rival, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, for Gandhi, there are no constraints on intermarriage and interdining between Varnas. However, a man should voluntarily refrain from taking up any profession other than one appropriate for his father's Varna. As Gandhi teaches, belongs to the Varna in which he was born, but by not living up to it, he will be doing violence to himself and becomes a degraded being, a patita. A Shudra has as much right to knowledge as a Brahmin, but he falls from his estate if he tries to gain livelihood through teachings. Vivekananda, like Gandhi, defended what he considered the true spirit behind caste, which was non-coercive and had nothing to do with ritual purity and impurity. Note the similarities in Vivekananda's defense of caste. Now, take the case of caste in Sanskrit, jati, species. Unity is before creation, diversity is creation. Now, if this diversity stops, creation will be destroyed. Not even in the latest books is interdining prohibited, nor in any of the older books is intermarriage forbidden. Then what was the cause of Indians' downfall? The giving up of this idea of caste. As Gita says, with the extinction of caste, the world will be destroyed. There is little historical evidence for this revisionist understanding of the ancient Indian social order shared by Gandhi and Swami Vivekananda. However, that has not limited popularity among contemporary Hindus of the idea that the original caste system was pure, though in later times it became corrupted. It is only historically inaccurate to tie Vivekananda's universalist inclusivism to the communalism of the contemporary Hindutva movements. From a practical point of view, it is also a mistake for India's secular left to see Vivekananda as a political symbol of its Hindutva opponents. For this is exactly what the VHP, RSS and BJP have sought to do themselves by repeatedly using Vivekananda's saffron-clad image and selectively quoting his statements of national pride to give the impression of Vivekananda's support for the later Hindutva cultural political program. Evidence of this can be seen in Vishwa Hindu Parishad's heavy involvement in events commemorating Vivekananda's 150th birth anniversary, including the controversy that arose in 2013 surrounding the VHP's involvement in a celebration of Swami Vivekananda's birth anniversary in Chicago. The Council of the Parliament of World Religion was the interfaith ground that sponsored the original conference in 1893, in which Vivekananda first appeared on the world stage. It pulled out on the 2013 celebration in Chicago, reportedly because it did not want share sponsorship with the VHP and appeared to endorse the VHP's divisive positions in politics and religion. The tendency among contemporary scholars to concentrate on whether Vivekananda is a true representative of Shankara's philosophy is understandable. Vivekananda's teachings encourage such behavior, as he often represented himself as Shankara's admirer and heir. However, the tendency we find in Paul Hacker, for example, of catching Vivekananda out as presenting an inauthentic pseudo-Vedanta is an example of sloppy intellectual history. The Indologists are finally beginning to catch up with Swami Vivekananda. Much more remains to be done, however, in excavating the many state of world affirming Advaita Vedanta. The Advaita Bhakti traditions that inspired the 16th century Advaita commentator Madhusudana Shastri to argue for the path of Bhakti as equal to path of Jnana. Vivekananda's genius was to show his countrymen and the world that the non-dualist philosophy of India have universal and not merely sectarian implications. Without the thinkers after Shankara and before Vivekananda, who intervened to show how the philosophy of non-dualism had within it the seeds of social equality, Vivekananda's triumphant message would not have been possible. Thus, we can understand the philosophy, Advaita philosophy of Swami Vivekananda. Shri Ekantaya Kalyana Nade Nadedram Shri Venkatanivasaaya Srinivasaya Mangalam Mangala Sasana Premadacharya Purogame Sarvesha Guruvera Acharya Satkritaya Mangalam.